So today I thought I would start something around how to get started and how to change few things and perform common tasks in custom forms. So custom forms is the new way, basically the modern way of customizing list forms. We have invested heavily in partnering with PowerApps, working as one Microsoft. In fact, this week we have a customer event here and meeting several customers, and we've got awesome feedback, as a great feedback around custom forms. And all this feedback is going to help us make the experience better, provide richer support. Like, I know there is questions around ALM. I know there's questions around moving forms. I know there are questions around it's not really that simple for makers, but things are getting into our backlog. We're looking at all the things that we want to simplify. But in the meantime, PowerApps is really powerful. It's just that there is some usability issues. Maybe you're thinking around how to go about it. Maybe you're thinking around where to start. So I thought, let me give some examples and a flow, as in how do you go approach those problems, and how do you really approach customizing the form with various scenarios. So with that cleared off, let me go here and show you how to start with custom forms. So you have a list here. You have several ways to start. You can go to the PowerApps menu in the command bar and then click Customize Form. Or if you actually click the item and open the item in view here in the panel, you can also click Go to PowerApps. So I'm going to click Customize Forms, and as you might have guessed, this is not available for everyone. It's available for people, users that have the ability to manage list, in this case, a list owner. So I do Customize Form. It's going to load this page. It's going to take a few seconds. And keep posting questions in the chat because it will help me to just look at, and while it's loading or doing some manipulations, I would be able to help you guys as well. So what happens by default is it takes all the view, all the columns in the view, and then puts them in the form here. And it kind of gives you a studio where now you can see some of the gestures here. On the left, you have a tree view. On the right, you got some fields pane, and then there is some property pane on editing, some controls as well. But as soon as you click, the fields and everything disappears, right? How convenient. Let's start from analyzing what is here and how do we get to that field pane and then start doing things. The first thing is the SharePoint integration piece here, right? So the tree view is something that you're looking at. You're going to be scanning there, and you're going to see this SharePoint integration. This is a key piece that is telling PowerApps that all of the customizations I'm doing in this is actually related to a list form in SharePoint, right? So if you click this, and then here on the property pane, if you click Advanced, you will see some actions defined here. Which are basically on new, on edit, on view. And this is giving some, indication that this is going to be for the list form when somebody clicks new item, when somebody edits an item, or when somebody views an item, right? And if you click more options, you get more on what happens when you save, what happens when you cancel, right? So here you can put your own expressions if you are a pro maker. I have to use the term because sometimes makers doesn't need that you need to write expressions, but if you're a pro maker, you can write some complex expressions here, so you can have abilities to not save items unless there is something else figured out in maybe from some other data source, right? So that's the basic of how this custom forms is related to the list form host in SharePoint to do all of the operations. The other interesting thing here is that the form itself, right? So what it does is by default, it builds a screen that is able to be hosted in the list form, and then it adds a simple form control. And this form control, if you click on it on the property pane, you can see that it's already associated with the list that where you wanted to customize the forms and where you actually came from. And you can also see here in the properties pane, or if you go to the view, and there is a data sources panel that comes up there as well. You can see the research project list. Now, if you want to add any other data source, you can always click add data source and add it. Say, for example, you have a another list where you want to bring information and collate both as well. You can do it here as well. So obviously now the real question is, how do I edit these fields in the form? How do I edit the different reorder and do some basic things in the custom form, right? So everything is related with this SharePoint form. Now, if you expand this, you will see all of the controls added here, but not as controls, but as data cards. So SharePoint PowerApps today has this concept of a form control is made up of different data cards with which you can customize the elements that go into each data card. And that data card is associated with whatever the data mapping that you have in your backend. So if you look at the title data card, for example, it has something around star visible, which you can see that it says it's required or not. And then you have error message, right? So if there is any problem, you could use this label to display an error message. It has the actual control, the element. In this case, it's naming as data card value, because that's the thing that you would have to go look at if you want to get what's the value of this title, right? And then you got the actual key, which is the label for the field that we just mapped with the SharePoint, the display name of the field. So the first thing you have to do if you want to really manipulate the fields here, which is really not convenient, I would say, but here is how you could do it. Click the SharePoint form, and in the property pane, you got this option called Edit Fields. And that is where the pane comes up when you click on it, and you get the field summary of all the things that you have here in your form. Now, once I go here, you can see I can actually drag and drop. I can rearrange. I can put anywhere I want, right? So I can bring the effort at the bottom, and boom, it's now changed. I can also say I don't really want this attachments, and I'm going to remove it, right? Great, so I can remove that back. I don't really want sign-off status. It's not something I want to show when people actually edit forms. I can remove that as well, right? And if I want to add again, for example, I want to add the sign-off status back. So if you click Add Field, you actually see all of the field types here that has been brought from the list. So you can search quickly for sign-off and then add it back, right? So now that will get added here. So let's remove that. I really don't want it here for this form. And the other thing you can also do is that when you look at the SharePoint form in your property pane, one of the key things to really understand here is that as soon as you click anything in the form, the property pane changes to that context, right? Pretty simple. But you have to click on the form or use the tree view to click on the form to get back to the form properties. In here, you can see that there is several options here. You can have vertical layout. You can have kind of the horizontal layout if you want, simple layouts here. You can also choose how many columns you want, especially important if you're going with the horizontal layout. And also there is a default mode. So this is the form mode. So if I say edit, what happens is it becomes the edit mode. Now, since we came from SharePoint, it takes the default, the first item that is there in the SharePoint to show you an example of how the edit form would look like as a preview mode here. You can always click the play button to also preview in PowerApps, but this is not the actual preview of the form, how it looks in SharePoint, right? So I'm going to click the form again. And now what I have done is I've set the default mode to new. It really doesn't matter. Consider this as something a maker would decide to see how the form looks in new, edit, and other modes. But when it comes to SharePoint, if you have seen here in the SharePoint integration piece, if you go to advanced, you can see what happens on new. We actually call the form modes directly and open the form in that particular mode. So it doesn't really matter that if you set the default for the SharePoint form to be edit or new. It actually is also handled in the runtime to open the right thing. But the cool thing here is that now you're in the new form mode. You can do some specific things that you want to do for new form, right? So for example, this title is empty. Maybe I want to put some text that I can enter here for people can see what they actually can do, right? So if you come here in the properties pane, when you select the actual text control for the title field, there is some options here in the properties, and one of them is hint text. So here I can say, please enter a title, right? And then there you go. So now you get, actually, you don't need the quotes. So now you get the placeholder text for the title. So you can actually do these things for specific control sets. Now, one of the key things is for the date control, right? So you do want to set some default value for date when the new form opens up. So you can do that here as well, but it's a little bit tricky. And this is where the usability piece comes into the picture, right? You go here and you look at the properties in the property pane. It's like, well, I don't have the option to set default values. I don't have the option to do some more stuff with review the date control. But if you actually click advanced, there are lots of other properties here that are not available in the properties tab. So some of the things are, if you go look at the data for the date control and expand more options, you can see there are lots of options here, right? So the first one is format. So you can say, I don't like the format I'm looking at. So I'm just going to say date time format dot, I don't know, let's say long date time. Oops. Right, so it'll show Monday, December 31st, 2001. So you can change that format here. You have that opportunity here. And something else that is really, I find it very kind of very useful one is start here. Every calendar you pick, sometimes it's like set to 1999, 1901, right? I really hate that. So with the start year option, I can actually set this to 2016 or, I don't know, 1982 or 2018, right? So the user can start the calendar from that start year and end year as well. You don't want to end it in 2050. Maybe your the solution is only valid for the next 3 years. So you can simply use expressions as well, which is today plus 3, right? So from today, and you get the year, and then you add 3 years to that. That would mean whenever the form opens, 3 years from now is the calendar date that you want to show, right? So those are some really good options to actually look at. Now, one of the things you can see here is that I want to change the default date value to be today's date, but you can see it's actually grayed out. I can't really change things here. So one of the things you see here is this property cannot be edited while the control is locked. So I really don't know how this lock and unlock happens with forms. But one of the things I know is that users really don't like this, right? It's like, hey, I'm in the form, I'm editing it. Can you please let me do the things I want to do? So one of the things to remember is that when you are editing with controls today, what you have to do is you have to go select a control and then go to the advanced and then unlock to change the properties. So click that lock button for the control that you're editing. And this is per control and actually per data card. So that's something you have to do for every data card control in your form. I know this was really not an ideal experience, but this is also something that we're looking at to improve and have ability for users to do a lot of stuff here very quickly. So now you can see that I got a lot of stuff here enabled. And then if I actually go to the date, I actually have default date here. So in the default date, what I can do is now I can write expressions, right? So I can say if um, SharePoint, now we can write it here. If you feel this is really small, you can also see that as I started typing the expression, I got it here in this expression board where you can actually get more width here, right? So if all I want to do is if SharePoint form1 dot mode, right, is equal to form mode, which is what I'm looking at, is new, right? So if the form mode is new, then I want the default date to be today, right? Otherwise, I want whatever it is getting from its parent, meaning that from the data source. If you click edit, there's already a date on it. So you click view, there's already a date on it. So I want that to be the default if it's not a new form, right? So now you can see it has already reflected here in my control, right? So this is how we can work around with setting default dates, or this applies to any other field here, right? So depending on the form mode, you want to do or you want to set certain values to that particular field. So that's the kind of a view around how you work with the controls, the data cards, and things like that. Now you can do a lot more, right? So you can actually go to the owner, and this is a data card, and you can see that you still have to unlock. So we do the unlock, but I want to add more stuff to it. I want to add a picture so I can actually show the owner picture besides the control, right? So to do that, what we have to think about is where are we adding this picture, right? We are going to add it with the control, which is bound to the owner. So here I have the owner item, right? So if I go back to my form and now I set my default mode as edit, you can actually see there is a owner associated here, right? So inside this data card, I want the image control because the image control needs to be bound to this user. So if you see here in my tree view, here's my owner data card. I can go insert and I can basically add an image, right? So now that image is added inside the data card here. And obviously I can change the size. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to minimize that. Since this is inside the data card, I can actually control everything here. Right, at this point, I'm just like making sure everything works. I can also expand this a little bit so there is some spacing there. And I can select this control, right, the image, and I can easily now say that this image, which you can see here in the properties, is none right now. I can add an image file, right? So let me add an image file here, which I downloaded, which is a blank profile image, right? And as soon as I do that, I get a blank profile image. And you can see how it actually changed here. Now I'm using my assets that I have in custom form in my computer that I uploaded, and I'm using it here to point to that particular image control. But this is not the experience I want. I actually want the value of the user that is selected to be part of that blank picture. Maybe this is something I want to do when I actually open a new form, just like how we set the default date, right? So what do we do now? We have to go write expressions. We don't have an expression builder yet in PowerApps, so we got to go and get dirty with our Excel-like expressions in PowerApps, right? So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to make sure that I have the name for this. So that is data card value 7, right? So that's the control that has my name of the owner and the details of the person selected. So I'm going to click my image here, and I'm going to say if I'm going to use some functions is blank, right? And that is, so as you type, you'll actually get the IntelliSense, right? Data card value 7, right? Dot selected, right? So if that is blank, I want to show the blank profile picture, right? If not, I want to go to the data card value 7 dot selected, right? And then you can see I actually get every IntelliSense of the property of the person control from SharePoint. So I can display picture, right? And now I close the, yeah, there you go. Now I close the thing, and now you can see I actually got the image of the picture. But it's, so now if I go to this form and change the default mode to new, you can see I got the blank picture, right? And if you actually want to test this, you can actually go find, a user here, Nestor, and now the image is now changed to Nestor. And I actually delete this, you can actually see it goes back to blank. Now that's pretty simple, right? If you know exactly how to go do this thing, this has become something that you can repeat everywhere in your project, and you actually know how to go do this thing, right? The other thing I always find is people complain about, hey, this is square, I don't like it, I want to make it something round, right? So all you need to do here is go to this border radius, and let's say we put 15, right? And then there you go. So 15, maybe 25. And now if I go back to my form, edit, you can see that it's actually round. So you can control those things to in your properties with that image control specifically. So and yet again, if you want to add more things to this form, right? So for example, you click the form, you saw edit fields, and when you click add fields, everything here was from SharePoint. What if you wanted to add your custom fields, or something that is part of the form? Let's say you just wanted to add a header to the form, right? So you can do that. There are two ways. You can basically shrink this form and then add your controls here in the canvas, right? But I don't really like that approach, because then I'm building something that is not part of the form. So I go to the form, edit fields, and there is an option to add a custom card. When you click the ... menu, and you click that, you actually get now a custom card. So now I can push that custom card to the top, right? I can basically here, come back here, make sure I'm selecting the data card, insert a label, right? And I can here say beautiful custom form. I can do some things. I can go here, I can fill the color to be a theme color, and then I can select the theme for the text color as white. I can move around in the data card, make it something that I can fit to the screen. I can reduce the size for that as well. I can even go and say, well, I will put the center aligned text, and boom. Now I actually have a form that is visible here with some custom controls. And you can put any control here. It could also be something that's coming from another data source, right? So now all I need to do if I want to push this form to SharePoint is you can go to File, you can save and publish, or if you just want to click back to SharePoint, you'll have the option to save and publish your changes. So now that I can do that, and I actually, will get the PowerApps will publish this and open the list. And just to make sure things are good, you do another refresh. And now I click new, it'll actually load the custom form with all the stuff that we actually made, including the default date and the default image that I have put here when you don't have anybody selected here, right? And if you actually click, you can see that it's actually giving you the view form. If you edit all, you can see it's still actually using that image. And if you see the date and then actually click here, it is using the configurations we said, 2018 and then 2022, 3 years from now. I don't have to deal with the 1901, 2001 dates, right? So that's great. So that's the basics of getting started. I will do some more demos as we come off of our summer vacation. So I'll go deeper into how we can do some other scenarios in custom forms.
Excellent. Thank you, Chaks. Thank you very much. Really, really useful stuff for getting this shown and recorded as a getting started model as well. Because I think every now and then we forget about the fact that there's always new people coming in, and then they don't know how to get started on these technologies.